Welcome to Chasing Time. I'm Tim Lewis, and today I'm chasing time with Ellen Stevens Newton. Welcome to my show, Ellen.
Thank you, Tim. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm glad to have you.
Thank you.
So let's start by looking at your education, your working career, and your background here in the Boothbay region.
Okay, I was born here at St. Andrew's Hospital and lived in East Boothbay for a number of years with my family of 7 siblings and my parents, and was educated in the local schools and worked in local hospitals and decided to become a nurse. I did that, and after several years I decided I was capable of doing more, and I became a physician assistant at the University of North Dakota Medical School.
Wow, you've had a colorful career.
Yes, I have.
And then you came back to Maine, right?
Yes, my husband and I got married, and we lived in Connecticut for a short period of time, and we were surrounded by concrete and tar, and I said, having grown up on a farm, there was no way I could survive in that environment. And so I said to him, where would you like to live? Anywhere but here. And he said, let's go to Boothbay. And so we moved back. After we had our first child, we moved back here.
And you worked in the local hospitals here, too.
Yes, yeah, Miles and St. Andrews, yes.
Wow. Yeah. Was your husband glad to be back in Maine? Or?
He loved it. He is a Connecticut boy, but he fell in love with Maine and decided that he was going to, he was here for the duration.
And you have grown children now, right?
Yes, I have 3 children, Sybil, Abraham, and Leah, and they're all married now, and I have 7 grandchildren and a great-grandchild.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, can you highlight your family's involvement with Gowdy and Stevens Shipyard?
Yes, my grandfather, Jacob Arthur Stevens, and a partner, Wallace Gowdy, started the shipyard in East Boothbay on Murray Hill. And it was a boat that my grandfather had designed, and they built it. And the launching, because of the proximity to the water, the boat had to be rolled down Murray Hill into the water in order to get wet.
Wow. So that was a journey.
Yes. And when Wallace Gowdy died, my father, his brother Tunk, and their brother-in-law, Frank Cummings, they took over the shipyard, and they owned the shipyard until it closed. And it was at the Adams Yard at the site of the Adams Yard in East Boothbay, and now the Hodgson shipyard is there.
My grandmother's sister was married to Wallace Gowdy.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew the Gowdy family through my father. He was an avid historian and genealogist, and he used to let me tag along when he would interview people, when he would find people that had some relationship to them. He wanted to know more about it, and so the early years of my life I spent in graveyards and visiting elderly people in their homes, and my father taking copious notes, that's what my father, although a shipbuilder, was a historian and a genealogist at heart.
So that was a bouncing board for your interest in genealogy.
Absolutely, it really was. I became fascinated with the age of people. I had great aunts that were in their 90s, and my grandparents, on my mother's side of the family, my grandmother lived to be 100 plus, and so it was just fascinating to me. And then I would learn about their siblings and what happened with them, and I was hooked. And I didn't realize how deeply I had swallowed the hook until I had time to sit down and try to compile everything. So I've taken all the notes from my father and some from my brother Joel, and I started to compile them because I knew if I passed away and my kids found boxes and boxes of papers, that they would bring me back to life only to do me in again.
Wow. Now, you do genealogy not only for your family, but other people?
Yes, I have because I'm very curious, when I meet people, I say, "Who's your father?" And I learned that from my father, and that eventually leads into me grabbing a piece of paper and writing down as much information as I can about that person. And then I sit and I put all these pieces together, and I end up coming up with a family genealogy or a pedigree. As a matter of fact, Tim, I have a pedigree here for the Lewis family.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And it's really, it starts here with you. You're number one. And then
you.
on the upper surface of this, the male line always is on the top, and the female line. So your dad and your mom.
Yeah.
And this goes back to your great-great-grandparents. And the interesting thing for me was, in doing your genealogy, is you had 3 great-grandfathers who married 3 women, and they also were Lewises.
Really?
So you really have a healthy dose of Lewis.
Yes, I do.
In you. Absolutely. And this is just a small portion of your family as I've recorded it, because the paper isn't long enough. I would have to have a piece of paper the size of a king-size sheet in order to get it all so you could see it all at once.
Well, this is very detailed. Boy, thank you.
It is, yeah. It's part of, this is a pedigree format, laying it out like this. And it's a clear way for people to see where their parents were. And sometimes if you get really detailed, you can compare notes of, well, this guy was born in 1888, but his counterpart was 91 and 92. But there have been instances in my research where I have found that in, say, your great-grandparents, in their genealogy or their thing, the second wife was young enough to be the daughter, so that moves their children up another whole generation, but it's exactly the same family. So it's very interesting.
It is.
This is another format that I have used, and this is a family group sheet. And this is your great-grandfather, Sidney Gilman Lewis. And this format, you can see who his parents were, when he was born, when he married, and whom he married, and when he passed away. And this is a list of all of his children.
Wow.
And you'll be familiar with the names.
Yeah, I can see some now that I know.
It's quite interesting when you get back to your grandfather's era, because most of the people that are now living in this area that share the same line will recognize names.
They do.
And so it's very interesting to me. Some people, it's a real yawn maker. They're not a bit interested, but I love it.
It's good.
And,
it really is. I think sometimes when you're young, you don't look at it that way.
No.
But as you get older, you like to know
you begin to
what the
appreciate
history was of the family.
Exactly, exactly. So most of my research has been done just for me and for my friends. But at one point during my career, I decided that I needed to figure out what my part in history was, or my ancestry. And so I discovered that I had Mayflower ancestry, and in fact have 9 ancestors that came on the Mayflower. But when I was working on yours, Tim, I discovered that you have 7. And we share several of those.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
We share several of
those.
those.
So this is a Mayflower line.
And this is your Mayflower line. And
wow.
You're descended from John Alden, Priscilla Mullins, and William Mullins, who is Priscilla's mom.
I see.
John Alden came as a young man on the Mayflower. William brought his daughter Priscilla, and eventually John Alden and Priscilla got married. So you're descended through Elizabeth Alden, and she was John Alden's. But you also have another line that takes you back there, but that line goes through Sarah Alden, who was Elizabeth's sister.
I see.
So you have those 3. But you also have an ancestor named Richard Warren, and that came through your mother's line.
Okay.
And when you're looking at this, all of the people that are highlighted in red, that's the route that your genetics took to get you back to Richard Warren.
And that was on my mother's side.
This is on your mom's side,
I
yeah.
see.
Mary Arlene. And then I found Isaac Allerton, also on your mother's side of the family. And then Francis Cook.
Yeah.
Probably you haven't heard much about him.
Right.
But that was on your mother's line. And also on your father's line, Miles Standish, which
Really?
was a much more common ancestor as far as people in history know today.
Well, Ellen, that's very detailed. Wow. That takes some time.
Yes, it does. It is a real time consumer, and but it is, as I said, it's a labor of love. I do it constantly, and I take great delight in discovering relationships between people. And I now am in the middle of a project. I call it the Boothbay Connection. And what's happening, I've taken all of my father's notes, all of my research, and my brother Joel's research, and am compiling it into a project which is not really an extension of Green's history, but it is a point where I will be able to connect those people in Green's history with current families today. And the families are Southport, Boothbay, Boothbay Harbor, East Boothbay, Edgecombe, and Newcastle. But I take them from the current person today, like yourself, and work it all the way back to your immigrant ancestor, which was John in 1603. He was born in 1603 in England.
Wow, I feel very honored with all this this work. Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. You're absolutely welcome. Yeah.
So you must enjoy digging through a family history, and how far in time can you go back with a family's history?
I personally have been able to trace my Percy line. That's on my father's side of the family. I was able to trace that Percy line back to 928 A.D.
Wow.
Right. Just by sheer luck, because the Percy family was sort of upper crust in England, if you will, and those records are very well documented. And it was easy for me to stumble onto those and read them and then verify that those records that I found were correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
it really is how you can follow a trail like that.
Yeah, and some people, I have an ancestor named Spencer Forrest who was born in New Hampshire, and I have a list of all of his brothers and sisters, and I have only found his father's name, not his mother's name. I can't find them anywhere. And it can be that his name was Uriah Forrest, but it can be that he was an immigrant ancestor through Canada. And I just, coming through those areas, Millinocket, not a town at that time, records were not kept. People just arrived. So it was, it's interesting.
Now, can you tell us about the Mayflower Society?
The Mayflower Society is an organization that first began because the Mayflower settlement was actually the first settlement in this country where they brought women with them and children with the intent of forming an establishment. Jamestown was actually just created as an outpost for trading and exploration. And eventually women came and joined. But the Mayflower, when it sailed from England, well, actually Holland, they came with the expectations that they were going to stay here and they were going to start raising families and become self-sufficient here.
So it was a home.
Right. Absolutely.
And
So the organization began with people of like mind who discovered that they were descended from John Alden or Priscilla Mullins or whomever, and they formed a society. And I suspect, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I think it was just a frog hair's worth of snobbery involved because you were an import if
Yeah.
you didn't come on the Mayflower. And it's grown. And of course, as the population has grown, so has the organization in Massachusetts. And now there are people from all over the world who claim ancestry to people on the Mayflower. And when the Mayflower first came, they came in the middle of the winter. Why anyone would cross the North Atlantic in the middle of the winter is beyond me. But they did, but I believe just over half of them died that first winter.
Yeah.
And so to have that history and all the trouble that they went through and the trials and tribulations, for them to have survived shows somebody has some spunk somewhere. And so
Yeah, absolutely.
people began to think, I do have quite a history, but now it is worldwide. When I was the active historian, I helped a fellow from France figure out that he indeed was descended from one of the pilgrims, and there was a young woman who was Japanese, and she too, by marriage of her parents, she too is an actual proven descendant of the Mayflower. And to become a member, you have to be able to prove with documentation that, yes, you really are the child of Carl, and he's the son of Durbert, and so on and so forth, with birth certificates, records, vital records, any kind of land records, census records in the later years. So it's a chore to do it, but it's a real...
it's rewarding.
Oh, it's very rewarding for me.
So you work with international.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the Mayflower Society, is that in other states around the country?
It's in every state in the United States. It's in almost every country in the world now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were historian?
Yeah. I was a historian for the Maine Mayflower Society. It was my job when somebody would say, I believe I am a descendant of John Alden. I worked with them to prove it by gathering all of this information, documentation for it to prove it.
And you're still a member of the
Yes, I'm a life
Society.
member of the Mayflower Society, yes. Yeah.
Here's a good question. When you're digging into a family's history, if you encounter a roadblock, how do you get around that roadblock?
Well, sometimes you don't. Sometimes the road ends at the edge of the cliff. But most times, there are several records that you can use. In current times, I use the census records because most people don't lie about their census records when they were filling them out. Now they don't bother to fill them out. But and then there are vital statistics. Most towns kept very good records of when children were born and who they belonged to in order to determine how the town was growing. And they also kept death records.
I see.
And the Scottish format for naming children was the firstborn son was named after the man's father, or the father's father, and so on. And so you could have in one town, you could have 4 Matthew Lewises, if you will. And so sometimes it's not easy to sort them out, but records, vital records, and then land records are a great way to determine, well, there was nobody living here at that time, but in the next town, that guy's, and yes, the dates fit him, so it's very and the boundaries changed on towns too.
That's true.
So
yeah, wow. So you got to be right up on your game.
Yeah, just you have to be dedicated to give up time, and that's the biggest thing. But it's exciting when you find something.
I bet it is.
That you've been hunting for a long time. But sometimes the record just isn't there.
Now, can you recall any family's genealogy that stands out as your favorite?
Several. One was Sarah Porterfield, who is an ancestor of mine through my father's line from Georgetown. She and her 3 sisters and her mother were coming to the United States to join her husband, her father. And so he was in Pennsylvania with a large population of Scotch-Irish immigrants. And they were shipwrecked off Mount Desert Island in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
And the captain and his crew, or a portion of his crew, left in the only lifeboat that they had. And these people, if you can imagine, these people were wet, wow, and I'm sure in woolen clothes in the middle of the winter at MDI. And they had to dig clams. They found whatever they could to survive. Eventually, the captain came back with another ship, picked everybody up, and they brought them to Georgetown. And that's where, if you look in the Georgetown records, you'll find the Porterfield family. And that's where my ancestor, Sarah Porterfield, settled. She married and settled there. The rest of the family moved on to Pennsylvania, where their father was. Another one was Rose Otis, who is also part of the Pinkham family in Boothbay Harbor. She was captured by the Indians and taken to Quebec, which was not an unusual thing at that time. But Rose survived it, and she moved, and she came back home.
Really?
And she survived. My favorite one, on my mother's side, if you knew my mother, she was quite a character. She had an ancestor who lived down in the Arundel area. And the women, there was a fort down there, and the women would go to the river and do wash and wash clothes and whatever needed to get done. And they would go as a group, safety in numbers. And the Indians would come on the other side of the river and expose themselves to the women.
Oh, gee.
And so my mother's ancestor decided he would fix that. And he hid it under seaweed, and the women were down by the thing. And when the Indians exposed themselves, he shot them with salt.
Oh, gosh.
And I thought, that's so typical of my mother. I can't even believe it. So, yeah, it's quite interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some local flavor there.
Yes.
Wow. Ellen, I thought we'd step back a little bit. You were in Arizona for a number of years, right?
Yes.
In your nursing career.
Yes,
Can you tell us?
And I actually worked as a physician assistant on the Navajo reservation. And of course, my genealogy bug was piqued because I wondered how these people, not keeping records like most, towns, established towns, how they handled it. And I worked with a nurse, Bill Elliott was his name, and he was Navajo. And his father was white, but his mother was Navajo. And I said, do you know anything about your family? And he said, no, I don't know. And so I gathered as much information as I could. And lo and behold, I was able to stumble upon his great-grandmother, who had married a British soldier, and he had gray eyes. And so he became known as Gray Eyes in their tribe, and his great-grandmother's name was then Gray Eyes. That was her last name. And so I was able to follow that family for quite a way, and on the white side of the family, I was able to follow that line all the way to contemporary time.
Wow.
But it was interesting because when I contacted a man who was related and approximately the same age as Bill, he didn't want to have anything to do with it because he was Indian. And so today, even those biases exist.
I see.
I loved my time out there.
I bet you did.
Yeah, it was absolutely
And
wonderful.
how many years were you there?
6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a good stepping stone for some
Yeah.
integrity.
It opened a whole new world to me because I grew up with Pinkhams and Brewers and Newcombs, and the same family. So then when you start digging into people named Gray Eyes, or you start digging into people named Talkington, all of those names are very new to me, and it opens up a whole new era of history for
Sure
me
it does.
as I follow these people through time, chasing time.
Absolutely. You're stealing my show there. I like it. Ellen, is there anything I forgot? Would you like to add anything more to our talk?
Well, as I said, part of my project today is gathering all of these families and all of this information so it has a central collection area. And I'm now people, I see them and they avoid me because I know that they think that I'm going to ask them who they are and who their folks are.
Yeah.
But I've decided that the only format I could come up with to get this information out to people is to start a show on the Boothbay Region television. And I'm going to call it Relatively Speaking. And I'm going to share the information that I have, but I would like people to call me and meet with me and help me fill in questions that I don't know the answers to and I can't find. I know my schoolmates in this region. I know them and I know most of their siblings or spouses. But when it comes to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, I'm lost. And so for me, it would be a great help. And I'm hoping that this venue that I'm choosing to work through will encourage people to come forward and to talk about their families or to share information about their families.
I think you'll find a good response.
I hope so, because what I'm noticing in this area is a real loss of the sense of community. And I want to bring that back, if through nothing else, by showing you that you're related to that guy that you hollered at the other day, that you have, you share common ancestry and history, and hopefully that softens the rough edges and
I like it.
Enlightens people as to what their families went through in order for them to be here. Because every single person in your ancestry had to be exactly there at the right time, or you wouldn't be sitting here.
It's the truth. It really
Absolutely.
is.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great thing you're doing. And
Thank you.
I think you'll find, as I said, a good response to people.
Terrific.
And,
Thank you very much.
Ancestry is a good thing to hang on to.
It is. The tree will die if you don't take care of its roots.
You got it.
Absolutely.
I like it. you fit that in perfectly. So, look, so I think we'll maybe close the show here for now.
Okay.
I think we covered some good ground.
Right?
Huh?
We can always come back if we have to.
We can come back. So I want to thank you for coming by today and talking with us.
Well,
and,
thank you for having me.
And your wonderful work you do in genealogy. You bring life back to people again.
I hope so.
You do.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I always like to close on a positive high.
Okay.
And I think this one, I think it fits this setting perfect. You can tell me after the show if I'm right.
Okay.
The study of genealogy is a window to the past, a way to preserve memory for the future.
Perfect.
So I think that's about right.
Right.
I'm Tim Lewis, a Boothbay Harbor native, and your host of Chasing Time, signing off from BRTV in Boothbay Harbor. Till we meet again, my friends, stay forever young.